Okay, morning. This is. Oh, so Sophie is online at the moment, so she's the extra person in our meeting. Good morning. Welcome to the Planning and Climate Change Committee. Start with our karakia. Everyone can join in. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hi aki ana e te kura, he tio, he huka, he heihu, tihe mariora. So, have we got any apologies? So we've got, Sam's an apology. And unsure about, well, Shayna's apologies for lateness. Deborah, has anyone heard from Deborah? And Sophie is online, so she's present, as I've said already. Can we have a mover to accept those apologies? Second. All those in favour, say aye. No one's in favour? Okay. Against? Carried. Any identification of extraordinary business? Nope. Okay, next one. Any conflicts of interest, new ones that aren't already on the register? Nope. And so now go to public forum. We've got Murray Thomas is going to come and talk to us. He's going to come forward, and he's going to talk to us about exotic tree removal at Castle Hill. And you've been shown how to use the microphone. You can pull it towards you.
Okay. Good morning, councillors and staff. I'm a resident of Westmoreland and of Castle Hill, so I'm pretty aware of fire dangers. And when I'm living at Castle Hill, it's just so obvious that we're sitting on a time bomb, just like Lake Ohau. If a fire got going up there, there's absolutely no way we'd control it. So I know the council has been looking at removing some of the trees and has done some in the past, but we really need fairly urgent action. I've been around the village and I've counted 850 exotic trees. There's probably 3,000 or 4,000 cubic metres of combustible fire material. It really needs a pretty heavy approach to solving this problem. The council, a couple of weeks ago, sent a team up there. They're up there for 2 days and they cut down 6 trees, that was okay, but they're really just playing with the problem. I've spoken to a forester, and what it really needs is a logging gang in there with a forest harvester. He envisaged they'd probably have all the trees on the ground within a week. The harvester cuts them down, prunes them, cuts them to length, and they're ready for loading out. So that's the sort of commitment we really need up there. The value of the Douglas fir and the larch trees would probably offset the contractor's costs. So what would be left behind would be any unsuitable logs, small logs, which the locals would snap up really quickly for firewood. And perhaps a month or two after that, the council could go up there with their chipper and chip up the slash and just leave some heaps of chip around for the locals for their garden and whatever. But that would really address the problem and get it underway. It really needs to be done before Christmas, before the windy nor'west season comes in. The winds are terrific up there, and if a fire did get going, there's absolutely no way you'd put it out. You'd be lucky to contain it, stop it crossing the main road. There's no water there. There's a bit of, there are some fire hydrants, but it would probably take 30 minutes to an hour to get the fire brigade up there. All the houses have got gas bottles hanging on the back wall, so the fire brigade wouldn't be too keen getting too close to a lot of those buildings. If you've got helicopters up there, the nearest water is Lake Pearson or Lake Linden. It's probably a 15-minute turnaround. So things would be well underway by the time they got up there. There is a pond in Castle Hill by the recycling shed. It should really have a liner in it and should be partially filled with water. So we probably could dip some helicopter buckets out of that. But apart from that, the firefighting effort would be futile. So the council really need to move on it. The remaining beech trees, they actually burn if things get hot enough, but they all need to be topped at about 40 feet just to stop them replacing the Douglas fir that are already there. Now, there's a lot of trees on private property. I think the owners should be given the option of having the council remove them or they remove them themselves. But there's one or two people up there want to see their trees remain, so we really need to deal with people like that for the common good of the village. What else? I think I said before, there's quite a few elderly people living up there, and with the cost of living crisis and things, and they've got property in Christchurch, some of their houses are uninsured in Castle Hill. So if we did have a fire, they're going to have total loss. And the council could probably expect a class action from those people that are, do have the loss of their building. So on one hand, the council have got an obligation to see this manoeuvre done, really. What else have I got to say? Yeah, so again, I'd just like to say 850 trees. They took down 6 the other day, that left 844. It really, the only way it's going to be dealt with is perhaps to get a contractor in there. And I've had experience. I've been a farm forester and a farmer, and I've worked in the timber industry. So I've got a reasonable handle on what needs to be done and how it would be handled. So I'd be happy to liaise with anyone that was, talking to a contractor, but I don't think we've got a lot of time to waste, really. Probably about all I've got to say.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. Any questions? Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you. Those that would like their trees remaining, is that for the aesthetics or wind value, or what do you perceive there?
Well, Castle Hill's like a monoculture. It's only got one species of tree up there, and that's really the way it should stay. There's a few English trees up there, but they drop a terrific amount of leaf litter, and silver birch, all that. They should. I mean, I'm a tree lover, but really up there, there's got to be no room for anything really. When Castle Hill was first built, there wasn't one tree there. It was just all tussock land. And it's been turned into a forest area. So I think remaining beech trees would be okay, but that's probably about the limit.
Deborah?
My apologies for coming in a little bit late. Are these trees on council reserve land, or are they still owned by the developer as unsold sections?
There's really, most of the trees are on council reserve. That winds its way right through the village. There's a lot of trees on road frontage, and then there is trees on private land. But there's not, there's a few trees still on unbuilt sections, but those people really have to be given the option of getting them cleared, really. And the other thing is a wee bit of dissension in the village. Some people have huge trees on their land and they end up shading the house behind them for no great reason. And there's been a few problems with that. some people are a bit selfish, they won't move the trees. If you're blocking the sun from somebody, you should really clear your tree, because it can be frosty till lunchtime up there. We get 200 frosts a year up there. So it's good to be thoughtful and give everybody a bit of sunlight.
And my second question briefly is there any information on the property limb, which is the land information for buyers that's stored at the council with regards to trees or managing trees or any special area for the village that maybe that people purchasing may have to understand, or covenants?
I'm not really aware of that, but there could be. But I would advise anybody, if they were planting their section out, because there is quite a lot of new housing going up there, that they plant native tussocks and maybe beech trees and leave it at that. Yeah.
Sophie's online and she's got a question. Sophie,
Kia ora. Yep. Thank you very much. Sorry, I can't see from my wee screen here who's speaking, but thank you very much for coming and articulating some of this risk as well. We had the Reserve Management Plan hearings the other day and heard a lot about exactly this issue, and also previously in the biodiversity hearings. My question to you is, it's interesting that you raised that there might be a class action if there was a fire and certain houses were affected by fire. Damaged or burnt down, because on the other hand we also heard that not only was this a risk, but also that if the Reserve Management Plan tries to change the aesthetic of the village too much from a North American style conifer village back to something that is more indigenous biodiversity, that we might also face some sort of action from people who believe that they were sold the North American style and it should stay that way. And I'm just wondering how you feel like the balance of the village thoughts are on this versus sort of the tourism impact of removing more and more of these trees for good reason, or the risk of the fire, that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. Well, the North American aspect is never really, I've never really heard that before. It should be remembered, when the village was built, it was a totally clear tussock land. Now, the conifers and the larch came about by the New Zealand Forest Service in the 50s doing experimental forestry blocks up at Broken River. They were worried about the this shingle scree and the erosion. Anyway, they decided that that was a natural process, and they actually walked away from all their experiments, leaving behind all the conifers, Pinus contortus, all sorts, which have spread. And it was so easy for homeowners up there to shoot round to Broken River and get a few specimens and plant them around their garden. So that's really where the trees have come from. But it's really a natural aspect to the area up there. There's no conifers anywhere else really. It's with the dock reserve next door, the rocks, the conifers are actually quite out of place. And it's not that I actually hate conifers. I think they're really great trees, but in the right place.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
So running short on time, just two last questions, if they're quick, Grant, and then
you may have answered it. Was are they wildings, or have they been planted, the majority of these trees?
They've mainly been planted, yeah, around the village.
Okay. Second question that I've got after that is, would the village consider paying for this? Because it seems an anomaly that the wider ratepayers would pick up the tab for this. We just had the long-term plan hearings, and people are very concerned about costs, particularly the amount of money that's going into smaller lifestyle type villages like this. Is this something that the community would do it, the council would do it, and would divide the cost amongst the house owners? Yeah,
I think perhaps chipping the slash and that, we probably consider contributing that. But as I said before, the contractor was pretty certain that the log value would cover his cost. So that would be no cost to the council getting the logs out the gate. The locals would clean up any wood that was left behind, and all it would be the slash. And maybe if we did have to pay, it would be a small price if we didn't get burnt down, you know.
Oh, thank you. Megan?
Kia ora. My question might actually be more for us at council than directly for you. But the first thing I wanted to say was Castle Hill is actually a really significant area for mana whenua. There's lots of sites and areas of significance up there, and it's part of what's known to us as the Pounamu Trails, so an integral part of that. And there's important limestone and rock art up there. So I wanted to first to say that to us as mana whenua, really important area as well. And so we like to see it protected. But my question comes to understanding the responsibility of who's responsible for actually dealing with the issue of wildland conifer. And there's a New Zealand wildland conifer management strategy that's a non-statutory document, and it outlines the role of regional council to kind of take a collective leadership response, and then also thinking about how us as a territorial authority can support that response. So I guess my question, and in the strategy itself, it identified that there's actually overlapping responsibilities, and it's really not quite clear who has overall responsibility for this issue. And so I guess this is more of a question potentially for us. It would be really good to clearly understand what our responsibilities are and under what statutes. So
No, that's a very good question, and that can be put on our action table for staff to follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that.
Well, just a couple of words on that one. I do think it's the council's responsibility inside the Castle Hill village to attack the trees, especially the trees on council reserve land. If a fire got going in Castle Hill, it would probably spread across the grasslands, which is into the Dock Reserve. And in the Dock Reserve, there's an endemic daisy that's only found at Castle Hill. So the wider issue, I mean, that fire could go all the way to the Waimaka if it got big wind behind it,
So,
right across those grasslands. So
thanks for that, Mr. Thomas. Sorry, we've run out of time,
Okay.
but we've heard what you've said, and we'll follow up with some of with what Megan had asked. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So the next item is so terms of reference. There's no one wants to bring up anything about that. There's been no changes or anything. That's just for reference. Confirmation of minutes of the last meeting. Anyone have any comments on that? Can I have a mover and a seconder for those minutes? Grant move, Lydia second. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. My chairperson's report, so that's been tabled. I assume that everyone's read it. If you've got any, happy to answer any questions. If you also notice, I've just sent around something that came through. I think it was from our Inside Government New Zealand web newsletter that we get emailed, which was so the government's launched an inquiry into new climate adaptation framework. So I've circulated that to everyone. That wasn't in my report because that's since come through after the report had been finalised. Any questions on my report? Otherwise, if we never have asked for a mover, I'll move my report and seconder, please. Grant, thanks. You've got a question, or I moved it. Yep. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Now the Acting Executive Director's Development and Growth Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of Robert Love, I'm just going to take this paper as read. Our team are here to answer any questions that the councillors may have.
Just also see that there's some questions that have been raised by myself and a committee in the last meeting, and those have been responded to in section 4 of this report. I heard online there were questions was raised from a submitter about tree canopy. This is something that we are looking at, and there's a response, officer's response about in that on where we're looking to go going forward with that. Grant, you got a question?
Specifically looking on page 36, the officer's response around soil quality and ability to support vegetation after development. The officer's done a very good job of telling us what the national position is, but I'm not sort of quite sure how that relates to our response to that. Does that follow through that will be applied through our planning framework and our inspection framework of new subdivisions, or?
I have to follow through with staff member who's currently away, and
the commissioner recommends a range of things that be done, but it doesn't say whether we're going to do them or whether we are doing them.
And this may be a discussion that we need to have. That's when Robert comes back. Is there anything you wanted to add? Oh, Ben.
I was just trying to catch up on reading it. Yeah, so we just outlined what it had in it. Trying to recommend. Yeah, we could probably have to come back and see what changes we're going to make in response to that. That's what sort.
Is there something else you wanted to ask, Grant?
No, that was it. Thank you.
And no other questions. So can I have a mover for that report? Deborah, seconder. Grant, all those in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Next one, tab 8, consideration of private plan change requests to a partially operative district plan. Jocelyn.
Morena Committee, thank you. The first report that I've got before you is consideration of private plan change requests. I'm happy to take this as read and answer any questions if you have them, appreciating that there's time constraints today.
Are there any questions for Jocelyn for this report? Deborah?
Just with regards to the requests for private plan change, do we have any ability, I guess, to, I guess it's through the resource consent process, it may be, or it may be through the plan change itself through an outline development plan, but where we have constraints on roads and traffic in the locations of where private plan change requests may occur, whose responsibility is it to pick up A, the planning, and B, the charges for making sure that there's no further impact?
I'll address the planning aspect of that, and I'll say that there's two stages. One is if a zone is requested to be changed, transport considerations, including the impact on the network, is a major consideration at that time. And then that will often set out the framework of either the timing of development or on the nature of roading improvements that are required. Having the land being rezoned, for example, we go through the plan change process and that's the outcome. Then at the time of a resource consent, any direction that the plan change process may have resulted in would have to be met or addressed to the satisfaction of council that the intent of what the plan change was, the outcome of the plan change was seeking in relation to that is being addressed or is not going to be impacted upon at the time that actual development occurs by way of a resource consent. The charges for that would be tied to development contributions. There may be other arrangements in place that occur outside of the consenting framework, but yeah, they're outside largely of the policy framework that I work in.
Grant.
Jocelyn, on page 47, we've got a big red stamp there saying approved by Selwyn District Council resource consent in 2022. Just for the benefit of the room, what is the order of process? I mean, where they're applying for a private plan change when it appears
Grant, this is the next one. Has anyone? Sorry.
Sorry, is that the next one?
That's the next
Yeah.
one.
Well, it seems to be linked together. Is it?
No, it's tab 9. It's the Pack and Save development.
Not talking about that. Okay.
So we got a mover for that report.
Sorry, my apologies, Chair.
No, that's all right. I'll move it. Seconder. Shane, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay. Now the tab 9 and Grant, your question. Oh, did you want to say something?
I was going to
introduction.
Yes, if it's all right with you, I'll just
Yep.
take a few seconds to just set out the framework with this. We have a request from Foodstuffs for a private plan change to change the zoning of a parcel of land at 157 Levi Road in Rolleston. The status or the report that is before you is to make a decision on how to proceed with this request. As set out in the report, when council receives a request for a private plan change, there are 4 options available to it. To adopt the plan change request, that generally means that council would then would lead the plan change and pick up all costs. We don't recommend that option. Then the rejecting of the plan change. There are 5 very clear frameworks within the RMA when a plan change can be rejected. In this case, my recommendation is that the plan change is not rejected, that all the grounds that are available to council to consider rejection are not appropriate in this case. The third option is to deal with it as a resource consent application, and as I've set out there, what they're seeking is to develop on the site is inconsistent with the current zoning framework, which leads us to option 4 being to accept the plan change request and continue processing it. I will make the observation, as I have in the report, that this decision that's in front of you today is not a substantive decision on the merits of the request, merely a decision on how we proceed. And today, my recommendation to you is that you accept the request from Foodstuffs to rezone the parcel of land at 157 Levi Road from residential to commercial, in this case, large format retail zone, and that we then continue with the substantive processing of this request, which will include public consultation, submissions, and then a hearing. Ultimately, a recommendation will be brought back to the council on how to make a decision on the substantive merits of the request.
Grant.
Jocelyn, I guess you may have got the gist of what I was trying, and my apology for being out of order. We're getting the wrong paper. I was trying to understand the timing, the process of around how a development such as this can get a resource consent approval when the underlying land is not zoned, for that proposal. So could you just expand how that happened, or the process? I mean, I'm not a planning expert, as I freely acknowledge.
That's all right. Much like anybody can apply for a private plan change at any stage in the process to seek the rezoning of land, similarly people can apply for a resource consent for an activity that is inconsistent with that zoning, which is what Foodstuffs did back in 2022. They applied for a Pack and Save supermarket. That resource consent was subject to public notification, submissions, a hearing in front of a commissioner who ultimately resolved that while it was inconsistent, in my view, with the zoning, which at that stage was Living Z, if I'm correct, that there was merit in the application. So it was the recommendation, or the decision was to approve that consent. subject to conditions, so they were able to establish a supermarket on that site. I will just look over my shoulder to say that Emma Larson is here, that perhaps she can speak more to the specifics of the request of the application. But my understanding is that it went through a process and a decision was made to approve it.
I guess I had one small question to add to that is, does that add weight to the private plan change request, or is it taken from a clean slate?
In terms of what would be considered to be the existing environment, it perhaps does. The underlying zoning of the site now is medium density residential zone, as is the land surrounding it. So there's been a change in context, but that environment exists with a consented supermarket sitting within it. It has been a discussion point that we've had internally about whether a resource consent for a large format retail, how that would proceed, again, having regard to the existing environment, which does have the consented supermarket. But ultimately, the request in front of us, the proponents, Foodstuffs, have taken the stance that having a zoning that's more suited to both their supermarket, their consented supermarket use, and future uses on that site would mean that future development was perhaps easier, and that the zoning more aligns with the activities as opposed to a residential zoning. They do make the point in their documentation that should in the future they want to come in for a signage application, for example, that would be assessed against the residential signage provisions as opposed to a more of a commercial, which the large format retail zone. So that's why they've chosen this path.
Oh, thank you, Jocelyn. Can I have a mover for this report? Bob, a seconder. Shane, all those in favour, say aye. Against, carried, and it's the end of this part of the meeting. It's closing karakia, so we'll join in. Uni here, tapo, ki wātia, e, kuhia wātia. So we've got a workshop now. Okay. So the workshop items have been changed around. So we're starting with George and the future Selwyn work. Thank you. It's only 9:30.
George has just got to get something up, so if you needed 2 minutes, that's all right.
So George, are we ready to go, or?
Atamarie, councillors, thank you for having me here today to run you through some of the changes we've been making to the strategic framework for future Selwyn. So this builds on a previous workshop where we went through our long-term aspiration in two parts, the vision and then the spirit of Selwyn. And I really appreciate everybody's frank and honest feedback on that, and we've worked that into the updated vision and spirit, and then we've taken that further and fully developed our the rest of the framework, which includes our outcomes and directions, and this will be guiding the future Selwyn work and all the future work that we do here at council, thinking about its role in the next LTP and community outcomes. So in your agenda, you'll see the Word version of the strategic framework, but I'd also like to share today the platform that will host Future Selwyn, which is a interactive, live, web-based platform for the strategy in ArcGIS Experience Builder, and just to demonstrate some of the functions that it'll have in terms of the interactive elements. So you'll see on the screen there, you'll see the strategic framework heading and the long-term aspiration, beginning with the description of what that means, the vision, and then the spirit of Selwyn, which I read out at the last workshop, and as the changes have been incorporated in. But building on from that, we have our 4 primary main outcomes, a great place to call home, and we'll use that as an example. And then associated with the main outcomes are these are outcomes that reinforce the main outcome, each with their own directions. So you'll be able to go into the outcome and then look through the directions associated with that outcome. So the way that just to go back over how these outcomes work, we have our long-term aspiration described by the vision. That's a small, short, sharp expression of what our long-term aspiration is. The spirit of Selwyn builds on that. It provides a more cohesive narrative. And then the outcomes framework says how we're going to get there. So it's the outcomes that we need to see to achieve that vision over the long term. And the directions are what we need to do to get there. So the directions are based off some of the workshops that Anne Molyneux from Deloitte did with councillors, and they'll remember we set the aspiration first, and then we got into the next stage, which is what do we need to do to get there. So I'll take the report as read, but I really just wanted to show some of the functionality and some of the iconography associated with these main outcomes. And I really would appreciate any feedback at this point so we can make some changes to the framework. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Sorry, I should have said before your presentation that we've swapped the two around for the briefing. So this is on page 72 of our agenda. Are there any questions for George?
George,
Grant,
it might be
yeah.
sort of nitpicking, but just regenerative economy. Do you have a clear definition of what that means?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So part of the Future Selwyn work is it's being progressed in tandem with the economic development strategy at the moment and all the mahi that's been supporting that work. So they're developing some outcomes, goals, and some catalyst projects and actions associated with the economic development strategy. So there's a bit of work that we're looking to do over the coming weeks to make sure that those two pieces of work are aligned, which is part of the strategic intent of Future Selwyn, is to be a system integrator, to make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, and that all our strategies, policies, plans, they go together. So a regenerative economy, my understanding, it has ideas of putting the environment first, thinking about circular practices, thinking about decarbonising the economy. But I think that is a really good question, and it's still to be fleshed out through the economic development strategies work.
Lydia?
Just on the page where we, a great place to call home, outcomes and directions, under inclusive communities, point 2, when we talk about promote biculturalism, I just wonder, can you dig into that a little bit more for me? Is that our relationship with our mana whenua? Because should it be worded a little bit differently? If I'm just thinking about biculturalism, we have a lot more cultures in our community, but if point 2 is to firm
this
is our relationship with mana whenua.
Thanks, Lydia. That's actually one of the ones I'd love to get some feedback on. So through the first iteration of the Future Selwyn strategic framework was used for the long-term plans community outcomes. And one of the changes there was that after we developed the first Future Selwyn strategic framework, we had the bicultural strategy work, Te Rautaki Tikakarua, which had a strong direction to promote biculturalism, lift our cultural knowledge and cultural competence. And that was included in the LTP community outcomes. So I was trying to find a place for that in the updated Future Selwyn strategic framework. But if there's better wording or an idea of how it can be multiculturalism and biculturalism, or if the first direction about honouring Te Tiriti and being a good partner might encompass that anyway, I'd really appreciate the feedback on those in particular.
I wonder if it should actually mention our bicultural strategy in the wording of point 2. Might clarify a little bit.
Megan?
Yeah, so my question was holistically going, well, how does this strategy actually incorporate the other strategies that we're working on at the moment? And so I'd say, for example, just dealing with that last question about biculturalism, that it would actually be getting some expert opinion of those who developed that strategy to go, how does it now fit into future, or how does Future Selwyn fit and shift now that we've adopted that strategy? And I was also thinking about the One Water strategy, which is in draft and it hasn't been adopted, but to what extent would that actually then change some of the language in this strategy? So my question is, how is it all being done together?
Good question.
That's a really good question. So I had confirmation from Te Pou Mātou that the bicultural strategy has got the intent of being internal, where Future Selwyn is outward looking. But if there are external elements, we're working with Te Pou Mātou to make sure that that's incorporated into Future Selwyn. The One Water strategy has looked at the draft framework for One Water that was shared by the team there and incorporated under healthy water and quality infrastructure. So we've been working cross-council to make sure that this framework encompasses all the broad work programs and previous policies and strategies where we can build on, incorporate them. But Future Selwyn's intended to be a strategic, a system integrator and aligning everything. So it's about incorporating them, and all those policies, plans, strategies can be seen through the framework, but then a lot of the implementation of Future Selwyn will be from future iterations of policies and strategies. So this provides the overarching vision, our long-term aspiration, and the outcomes we want to see. And a part of the delivery will be future policies, plans, and strategies.
So I guess that still doesn't quite answer it for me, because I can't see, if this is going to be the overarching strategy that talks about everything, and then we're going to do a blue-green network strategy, a housing strategy, and this strategy, and that strategy, and if some of those strategies are actually totally internal and aren't going to impact on this, then I'd like to be able to provide feedback and input, knowing what else is relevant and when it will come and how it will actually impact. Otherwise, I'm kind of left going, aren't we doing it all separately, and why?
Cool, thank you. Sophie's got a question online.
Yeah, George, thank you very much. This is a really interesting conversation, actually. I was just going to suggest on the screen that I can see shared right now. Oh, it's gone. Just a sec. There, yes, that one. On 4, whether number 4 within inclusive communities, would it be possible to add in design safe, accessible and welcoming? Because we do have our accessibility strategy, thinking again around linking in with other strategies. So that would also then include things like the Aging Positively strategy. And in number 6, again, in the inclusive communities one, whether that could be something like value and celebrate multicultural diversity, just to enforce, like, we have, obviously, in terms of biculturalism, that's to do with treaty partnership. We do have multicultural communities as well, but we are all tangata tiriti, and then there's the tangata whenua part. But it would be good to have multicultural in there somewhere, and I feel like that's the appropriate place to put it. So inclusive communities, number 6. That's just me. Thank you.
That's awesome feedback, Sophie. Thank you for that.
Deborah?
I'm actually going to follow on from Megan's question, because this is a strategic high-level document, and I'm just going to choose one area, which is looking at thriving ecosystems and biodiversity. And then I see that as a strategic position, we need to protect, we need to restore, and we need to enhance. The difficulty that we are starting to have, and I guess it's coming through the submission process and some of our planning decisions, is coming down to what is a safe level of elements, pollution, etc., that we can actually meet that strategic position, because there's so much diversity, interpretation, there's, and we're at risk of, procrastinating and delaying because nobody is actually prepared to draw a line in the sand and say, this is where we need to be at to actually achieve this objective or this high strategy. So I'm just a bit apprehensive of, it's okay doing all of this, but when you come down to look at it as your objectives, when you come down to your policies, which is the different plans that Megan's talking about, how are we going to set those environmental limits to achieve those objectives? And that is where there is a lot of controversy coming through our submission process, and of late, some of our planning decisions at a higher level. So just want to actually be made aware.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Deborah. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm just on page 76. So looking at livable, low carbon towns, et cetera, et cetera. So just wanted to point out a few things. We've got promote quality housing is number 5, and then we've got number 6, provide housing choice and affordability. Are we going to be housing providers? I'm just not sure if we should have such a definitive outcome in there, because given what the LTP submissions are coming in, we may be reining a few things back. So it might be that we have to be realistic about this, and it might be a facilitate the provision rather than outlining that this is what we are going to be doing. And it's the same again, we've got prioritizing sustainable transport, then we've got that we're providing the transport system. So that's just my questioning. And then on quality infrastructure, number 7, this is a public document, isn't it? Will be a public document, yeah. So just in terms of for the lay people to get their head around what number 7 saying, reduced embodied and operational carbon of infrastructure, for me, I'm going to be asking you, what does that really mean? So I would like it that the lay person doesn't have to come and ask me the same question. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, well, because my question wasn't answered, I just wanted to know, like, because I've got a lot of work to do now, right? I need to go and find all of those strategies that I've provided input into and then take them and compare them to this. And then I have to provide feedback that will be consistent. So that's hours of work ahead of me, because what I feel uncomfortable doing is tinkering with words in here and going, we're going to change that word here, but not know that it's actually pulling a thread and going to, for example, the biodiversity strategy that we just had a hearing on. So why would we put words in here that might then be inconsistent with that strategy, or the One Water strategy, or all of the other strategies that we're doing? So I'd like an opportunity to come back again after I've done that work.
I would think this was something that, Sharon, you want to make a comment?
After you.
I would think that was something that we should be doing, that staff should be looking at, because we don't want to be having, you're right, Megan, we don't want to be having policies that are inconsistent with each other. That doesn't make any sense. Sharon, are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is why the team have brought this into a workshop environment, is to get some feedback and the opportunity to perhaps stop, pause and think. So you've given some really good feedback, councillors have today. You know, this is, at the moment, this is an iterative and live document that doesn't come back to council ultimately until August, until after the LTP hearings, etc. And so it's really good to take on that feedback and think about whether we need to be having an additional workshop to be able to refine and take on board, because we don't want councillors having to go off and do a lot of extra work on top of. What we're trying to do is find a strategic operating framework linked to the future Selwyn to hang all of the different strategies off, and we maybe need to refine how we do that. And I think we've had some good feedback today that's given us some good food for thought, and you know, that's the beauty and purpose of having workshops, is you've given us some things to think about around how we're trying to do this, and I think it'll lead to probably some offline conversations too around any guidance.
Thank you. Ben, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, the current plan is that we will come back on the 12th of June for the council meeting to sign this off for consultation through July, August. Yeah.
I would just, we'll take a stop and pause, and Ben will have a catch up after this meeting.
Thank you. Is there anything else, George, for this, or we go on to the next item? Thank you very much. So the next one is the Canterbury Climate Partnership Plan. And that's on page 56.
Yes. All right, I'll just quickly run through the background of it. It kind of starts to mirror the slides in your pack there. So I'm just jumping in the middle here after filling in for Keith. Well, yeah, in that gap there. So last year we had a workshop with you guys on the objectives and the framework in the slides there. So today we're looking at the actions that have come out of the work, and outlined on those. There's 10 actions in there, so it's just really getting comments on those actions, making sure that you're comfortable with those. So the Climate Change Partnership is a group within the Mayoral Forum working on this. It's really focused around getting some good regional leadership and a united voice on these things. And the goal here is to get some complementary effort and collect on these collective actions, so to tackle things that we can't sort of tackle on our own. So yeah, page 1661 kind of outline where we're up to and the action development process, and then page 62 is that framework which we talked about last time, and so then the next ones are those 10 primary actions that have been identified. Do you want me to go through them, or just assume that they're there and you can provide commentary on them?
Maybe quickly go through them.
All right. So yeah, 10 actions. One is around understanding climate risk and improving resilience. Second one is around emissions reduction. Third is around adaptation planning. The fourth is nature-based solutions. Fifth is climate change education advocacy to support our communities. Sixth is around supporting the Papatupu Runanga. Seventh is around integrating it into our council processes, and then 8 is around the climate change funding, financing, then monitoring and implementation are the key actions there. So there is funding that's been outlined in the LTP to continue this work, and these are all actions in there that we couldn't probably individually fund ourselves, so it's good that we can collectively work together on that. And so the final steps there are that we'll get a final draft through August, September there and on. So just going back to those actions, is there any, as you've looked through them, is there anything that you're thinking that is missing or we need to add or consider? Just checking with my ECAN support buddy.
You could have brought your ECAN support buddy with you.
They said I could do it myself. So.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yeah, they had faith in me.
Any questions? Megan, are you?
Yes, I have a question. You saw
No.
it. It's just about. So, so I've got one question, one comment. My question is, to what extent was Mana Whenua involved in the working group that's actually come up with these 10? That's my question. My comment is just to, I think I've already brought to attention that Taumatu Runanga has just adopted a climate change strategy. We're about to do our adaptation framework, first wānanga this month. However, I can say from all the work that we've done so far that we completely support nature-based solutions, and that we have a view that we're better off making space for nature rather than trying to contain it. So looking at wetlands and that type of thing is effective ways of stormwater management. So totally support that, but also wanted to know what was the involvement to date.
Get a real answer. Sorry, you want to introduce yourself?
I will. Kia ora koutou, ko Isla Hepburn tōku ingoa. I'm Isla Hepburn from the Climate Change and Community Resilience team at Environment Canterbury, and I've been leading this piece of work. So to answer your question around Mana Whenua involvement so far, Mana Whenua were involved, or there was a Runanga steering group involved with the preparation of the Canterbury Climate Change Risk Assessment, which was the precursor to this piece of work, and that was done a couple of years ago. When this project was initiated, we approached members of that steering group to see if they would like to continue their involvement and if they had capacity. Our understanding at the time was that there was no capacity amongst Runanga to be able to do that. There are also some challenges around Runanga involvement at the mayoral forum level, because this is a Canterbury mayoral forum project. So there is no member of Mana Whenua sitting on the Canterbury Climate Change Working Group. That's something that we're conscious of, and that we've been looking for ways to be able to overcome those challenges. We have kept Runanga up to date with the work we've done, and we've reached out to them. Mayor Gordon from Waimakariri has reached out on a fairly regular basis, offering an opportunity to contribute to this plan, to feedback on our actions, to discuss particularly the action around supporting Papatipu Runanga. And to my knowledge, we haven't had any feedback from them to date, which is why partly why there is an action in the plan around supporting Papatipu Runanga, to be able to keep that door open and to be able to go back to them in the future.
Okay, I had understood that and I'm speaking specifically about Taumi Turunanga, had put forward Rachel Robiliard to be part of, from start to finish 3 years ago, the climate change, the Canterbury Climate Change Adaptation Framework. So obviously that hasn't, she's done some of the work, but not all of it.
We did meet with Rachel Robiliard at the start of this project, and she indicated at the time that she wasn't able to participate. She didn't have the capacity to be involved, so we haven't had any further discussions with her on this. We also discussed with Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu as well to see if there was an opportunity for someone to sit at that governance level, but that didn't eventuate either.
Any other questions? No, thank you very much. Oh,
Hello.
Sophie, yes. Sorry, no, I forgot. Brain's not working too well at the moment. Sophie, go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something as so I was on the working group. So this has been an interesting process. So it started prior to this current term on council. And there was a group that was meeting through ECAN. There was a group that was meeting through the Canterbury Mayoral Forum, and it's really good that it's coming to this level. And Elizabeth's been coming to quite a few of the meetings this term, and you, Nicole, came last term as well. It is really. I just wanted to say that it's been a really good thing, and it's great that Isla's here as well. And I just wanted to tell everybody that the goals that are there, and the budget that is there, this isn't the do everything budget. Like, it has actually quite intentionally been made to try and get the best bang for your buck in terms of rates and contribution towards a collective strategy in a time when we know that we don't want rates to go up higher than they need to. This is actually quite a tightly focused set of goals that are there. It's been a lot of work, and it recognises that the smaller councils particularly cannot do this by themselves, and there's a lot of work that cannot be achieved unless we do it on a regional basis. So when the finances are there, when the legislation's there, when communities demand action, the idea is that we have all the tools there so that we can jump on it and do things as quickly as possible rather than waiting until it's too late, which arguably we might be there already. But the point is that this is not a waste of money, if anyone was potentially thinking that, either within the room or outside the room. It's been deliberately focused to make sure that we do the right thing. Kia ora.
Thanks, Sophie. If there are no other questions, this is the end of the briefing this morning. Thank you for coming. And either if you want to stick around or if you've got time, and whether anyone wants to talk to you, if you're happy with that. Thank you. So the next meeting is starting at 11. That'll be the Finance and Performance Committee. Thank you.